Who would have thought 30 years ago that Porsche, one of the best sports car and engine builders in the world, would manufacture an electric wagon today? And not just only that, but a lifted electric wagon that not only looks fantastic, but manages to retain the Porsche design DNA beautifully. This is the Porsche Taycan 4 Cross Turismo, and here is my review of it. Today we're gonna have a look at this. This is the Porsche Taycan 4 Cross Turismo. It's a super cool name, and when the Taycan first came out, I thought it was one of the best looking EV sedans out there. It had the proportions, it had the typical Porsche identity that they managed to transform into an EV. And in this version, the Cross Turismo, this is actually a lifted wagon EV. So it's going to be really cool to see the spec and tech, and also talk about the design of this car from a front, side, and rear. And we also need to talk about the interior. So let's jump in. Huge thanks to Isley and the entire team at Royal Automotives here in Denver for letting me review this car for you guys today. Go check out their full inventory at royalautomotives.com, linked down in the description. Let's talk about some of the spec and tech of this base for Taycan Cross Turismo. It starts at $94,000 and it comes with a 93.4 kilowatt hour battery pack as standard, in comparison with the sedan, which you can have with a 79 kilowatt hour pack. You also have standard dual motors, all-wheel drive, which is a lot more practical, I think, to have, of course, a standard with this specific Cross Turismo, as it sits higher. Some people will probably take it out on a gravel road every now and then it definitely helps to have the all-wheel drive available. And this is what the key looks like, and you might wonder, does it have a frunk? By the way, I really like the design of these Porsche keys. Looks like a super sporty car. So let's open up the front and let me show you the space in the front. So as this is a dedicated EV car, you know that when engineers start a car, specifically being an EV, they prioritize everything that you want in an EV, and that includes a frunk. If you have a Kia Niro, for example, that comes both as an internal combustion engine and an EV, then the frunk space, it's not as prioritized, or it's not as big as in dedicated EV cars. And this is the space for it. Not too much to say here. It's just the charging cables in here. You can fit probably a small suitcase in here. Decent space for a frunk of a Porsche Taycan. What about the powertrain? So as I said, all Cross Turismos come with a 93.4 kilowatt hour battery as standard, and you get 375 horsepower, 368 pound-feet of torque. However, when you engage launch control, you get an extra 100 horsepower for about 2 seconds or so, just to get you off the line more easily. I would love to have that 100 horsepower available to me at all times. 0 to 60 is done in about 4.8 seconds, and top speed is 137 miles per hour. As you know, the faster you go in EVs, I mean, that goes for internal combustion engines too, but I think it's more exponential in EVs. The faster you go in EVs, the quicker you're gonna drain the battery. An official range for the Cross Turismo, this base version, is 215 miles, which doesn't sound too impressive. However, in real-world tests, it's actually very conservative. It's closer to 235 or 240 mile of range, which is not bad for what you get. A cool-looking EV, which is pretty rare these days, with a lot of other manufacturers focusing 100% on the range, creating, as you know, the very bubbly design that we have in a lot of other EVs. You can charge it with a fast charger from 5 to 80% in about 23 minutes. Not bad at all. And you have a 2-speed auto in the Taycan. Porsche decided to go with a 2-speed auto because they wanted sort of one gear for high-speed cruising. Being a German car, you want to go fast on the Autobahn and you still want to have decent range. That's why they actually decided to go with a 2-speed automatic. So let's have a look at the trunk space. You get 15.3 cubic feet of space back here. If you fold them down, I think it goes up to about 42 cubic feet, so you can put whatever you want back here. It's a lot of space, and a lot more specifically when you fold down the rear seats, you have a lot more space for stuff, whatever you want, than the Taycan sedan, obviously. Really cool feature to have the wagon version. This is definitely the one I would have if I was buying a Taycan today. The wagon version, maybe not the lifted one, as I said. The Sport Turismo looks, in my opinion, better. This feels like a cool experiment from Porsche to actually drop this lifted wagon out, and I'm really glad that they did it. However, as I said, the plastic cladding, the roof rails, these are optional. I think they look pretty good to have them on here. If you're gonna go with the Cross Turismo, you might as well go all out with all of the off-road features that you can get. This does not have the off-road package, which adds some more plastic cladding right here, for example, and down at the bottom. You still have this pretty cool looking silver trim piece down here at the bottom, which fits the silver roof rails that we have up on top. Let's start with the front end of this car. Some people don't like the new Taycan face for the Porsche, but I think it looks really good. Specifically when you consider that this is a brand new EV, so you need to have a more of a distinct, or set it apart a little bit from the internal combustion engine. So you have these LEDs in the front that is the new, since maybe 5 or 6 years back, the new identity for Porsche, specifically when you look at it at night. I also like this silver trim that we have down here. I think this is an option for this car. You can also have it with an off-road package, which adds a little bit more plastic cladding on the sides and in the all around the car to protect you when you go on those nasty trails, which I'm not sure how many people are actually going to take this on the trail. We're going to talk more about the driving experience when we get to that part. Overall, I think it's a really good front end of this car. As I said, it doesn't have that EV front end that kind of looks covered up, like it doesn't have a face or any personality. This has a lot of personality to me, and you can definitely see that is still clearly a Porsche. So looking at it from a side view, and that's obviously the view that separates it the most from the sedan. Coming from a country, I'm pretty sure Sweden is known as the wagon country. I actually think that this looks better than the sedan version. I love the sedan. It has really clear proportions. It doesn't really look like an EV, but adding this shooting brake style to the rear end, I think it adds another dimension to the Taycan design, and it also makes it a whole lot more practical. Obviously, what I would choose though, if I were buying a Taycan today, I would pick probably the Sport Turismo that doesn't have this plastic cladding around it. This sits 0.8 inches higher than the Sport Turismo, and then you have the air suspension lifting it up another 0.3 inches. But I'm not sure, you know, how many people are actually gonna have to use that higher clearance. It looks very cool, and it's also very functional for gravel roads and so on, but I just don't see this going out on some proper trails. And for that reason, I personally would probably go for the lower sitting, no plastic cladding Sport Turismo. I think that looks absolutely fantastic, but you need to have the right wheels on it. Now, looking at the rear end, this is obviously, in my opinion, 3/4 rear view is in 95% of the cases going to be the best view for me looking at a car. And I absolutely love how this looks, because we have these big, beautiful Porsche fenders wrapping around, and you can see just how the greenhouse kind of goes in and becomes a lot narrower when it comes to the back. And just look at how short this height is for a wagon. And I think it's really cool that Porsche, being a sports car manufacturer, focused on aesthetics over optimal luggage space in the rear. This is what I want to see, specifically when it comes to Porsche and sports cars manufacturers. I also love this new design that we have on the Taycan, that is this one single little thin LED that goes from one end to the other, sitting inside this beautiful housing for it. So we have this chamfer down here creating a base for this graphics, and then you have the Porsche letters in here, which I feel like I just want to be able to take out and just feel, they feel 3D printed or something like that. Looks really beautiful in the rear. However, one change I would do in the rear here, if I were to spec this car, is to get the Taycan 4 logo blacked out. So you can get it in black or silver like we have here, or you can just delete it if you want to. I'd rather have it on there, but in black. I think that would look a lot cleaner. Down here we have the same kind of silver trim that we have in the front end. No exhaust, obviously, because there's no engine in the car. It still looks sporty. We have this diffuser sticking out a little bit from the bumper, creating a nice base for the overall rear end of the car. You know, these wheels, EV wheels, usually are covered up, and these are as well. You can see that here, that they still have this EV feel to them. But honestly, when I first saw this from far away from this angle, it looks like they're actually single spokes. And I think it's a really cool way of hiding the you know, EV feel for the wheels, the aero feel, and make them stand out better with having this high contrast that we have on the wheel design. Now that we talked about the exterior design, it's time to jump in and let's have a look at the screen integrations. Are they iPads stuck on the dash, or are they actually decently integrated in the interior? All right, so let's have a look at the interior and what's going on here. So it's pretty clean. Specifically, I really like the integration of the gauge cluster. I've never seen an integration similar to this in any other car. So as you can see, this integration feels like the normal Porsche integrations. We also have some bases for the gauge cluster itself, and this is 16.8 inches. You have an 11-inch infotainment screen here, and then you have this screen, which I believe is about 8 inches or so. You can option this with a passenger display here. But personally, I don't think I would do that, because my wife would see the speed I was going at all times, and I don't think that's a good idea. Actually, in this case, I think that will be reversed. I would see the speed my wife would be doing, because she sometimes thinks that she's the Stig when she's driving cars. So I would not option with the extra screen here. This looks good enough. I don't need a fourth screen over there. But overall, I think it's a really good integration of this gauge cluster in a unique way. As I said, I haven't seen this before. Looks really clean. One detail though, when you look at the infotainment screen, it sits off center from this center console. I know that's just a detail, might not bother anybody except for me, but when you've seen it, it's kind of hard to unsee. I just want to move this over a couple of inches to that side. Obviously that's not possible, because then it's going to clash with the side of the gauge cluster here. Up top we have a stopwatch, I believe that is, and you also have a looks like to be a compass in there. Pretty cool. This is all soft touch materials. The doors is pretty simply laid out as well, nothing too complex about that. You have the three settings, memory settings for the driver, and you have the window controls there obviously, and for the mirrors as well. One thing you don't want in a brand new car like this is a lag in the screen time, and I think this has a decent speed in the infotainment screen. It feels good to use. However, would I still want to have some tactile buttons for the interior? Yes, I would. However, this screen in the middle here feels a little weird to use. So you have the climate controls here, as you can see. I'm not sure I like this integration of the screen. I would much rather have a dial for these type of settings. Imagine when you're driving this and you want to really quickly change this, you don't want to have to look down and see where exactly you're hitting your finger. You want to have something tactile, a lot easier to adjust whatever you want to adjust, but still pretty responsive and not too slow. And I guess the position of the screen itself is right where you want it to be. All right, so let's jump into the rear seat and let's see how much space I have behind my own driving position. These seats, by the way, the front seats are the standard seats, and climbing in here, I don't have a ton of space, but it's pretty decent for what it is. It's still a Porsche. As I said, they don't really prioritize interior space over looks. So this is my own driving position. I'm about 6'1", and you can see that I can barely fit my knees and legs behind my own driver position. Down here you have some normal vents, not too much to talk about back here, except for the headroom is really good. This comes standard, the Cross Turismo comes standard with this big massive panoramic roof, and that really helps with this portion because it carves into the roof, as you can see, and creates a lot more headroom. All right guys, we're taking the Taycan 4 Cross Turismo for a short drive, and as you can see, typical Porsche fashion, you have the starting button right here to the left. So this is the first time I'm driving a Taycan, so it's going to be interesting to see what this feels like compared to my Tesla Model 3 Performance. It's probably not going to be as quick off the line, but again, you have that 100 horsepower extra in the first 2 seconds. Backup camera looks a little weird. It has a very fisheye lens to it. I guess it's good to see as much as possible, but it definitely warps the perspective just a little bit. One thing that's a little strange with the Taycan that I don't really understand why Porsche did it is you don't really have one pedal driving in this. You really need to press the brake pedal if you want to stop, compared to EV6, compared to the Model 3, where you can definitely just use one pedal throughout the entire drive and not even touch the brake pedal. I think that would be a good idea because of the range. We have, what was it, 220 miles of range officially, but then that's really conservative from Porsche's end. It's more like 240, which is not too bad. But I think if you have the regen braking, you could probably extend that. I do like the screen. Usually, as you know, I'm not a huge fan of digital gauge clusters, but in this case I can see clearly through the steering wheel what it is I want to see. You have the tire pressure here. I guess you can change that if you wanted to whatever you want, customize it. I do like that we have the camera the map right in the center. Makes it really easy to see where you're going. And the ride quality is really good. I mean, I'm not surprised by that, as it sits higher than the Sport Turismo. But still, it feels super solid. I do wish that it did have a little more range, because since it's being a Cross Turismo, that would kind of mean that you want to take it to roads where, you know, that are a little bit outside of the city. But if you only have 220 miles of range, it's going to be pretty difficult to find those type of chargers that you need when you go on a trip like that. And that's the reason why, me personally, I would probably go with the Sport Turismo, just because I feel like I don't really need the added ride height to the car. Definitely has some cool noises to it. The Tesla, when you step on that, you have this super high-pitched whine that sounds pretty interesting. Here, this sounds a bit more like a I don't know what to call it, like a spaceship or something like that, similar to the EV6 sounds. Even though this is not the Taycan that I would pick, as I said, I would pick the normal wagon, the Sport Turismo. I still think it's really cool that Porsche decided to put this into production. I mean, an EV, you have the Taycan, you add the wagon rear end, and then you have the lifted suspension as well. As I said, it feels almost like an experimental car from Porsche to see if people want this type of cars. And I think they do. EVs nowadays, they start to look all the same, and I want to have some manufacturers focus on less range. It doesn't have to have 300 miles of range, because I don't think a lot of people drive 300 miles every single day, and you can charge it overnight. But instead, focus on making quality, unique design that sticks out from the crowd and still retains the identity of the brand, and not make it just into a blob. Like, for example, I think the best example of that is Mercedes. All right, let's see if we can step on it for a real quick second here. Yeah, it feels pretty fast. It feels like it has 375 horsepower, and that's about it. It doesn't feel faster or slower than that. And you also have the benefit of EVs, which is you have the torque right from 0 RPM. Turning radius, decent for the wheelbase, for the size of this car, not too bad. That's my review of the Porsche Taycan 4 Cross Turismo. Thanks a lot to Royal Automotive here in Denver for letting me have a look at this car and review it for you guys today. Go check them out in the link in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.